Welcome into Betting Weekly Fast Break on this game day of the NBA Finals, Thursday afternoon, game one tonight in Oklahoma City. And we have our resident Hoosier in the house. I'm Doug Kezirian alongside professional handicapper Wes Reynolds, who is a Pacers fan, in case you didn't know the last couple days.
Yeah, 25 years it's been since the Pacers have reached the NBA Finals. I used to work for the organization for a short time, so nice to see them back. But we promise this is going to be an unbiased, totally 100% down the middle fair broadcast.
Well, it'd be great if this were the year 2000 because I'm an LA native and Laker fan. And I was passionate about those finals back then because the Lakers were searching for answers in the Kobe Shaq era. They had just gotten Phil Jackson. So that first title with Phil was certainly impactful. But good to see the spirit um, with you supporting them. But we want to hear things from a betting perspective. And we've broken it down all week with a nice rotation of great guests and great insight. And so we have Wes here to break it down. Now, last week, you were rightfully on the Pacers to advance, and we got there in game six. I was a little gun shy, but that was the only side I would have played. But much different situation now. Pacers are sizable underdogs in the series. Look, Wes, I know you are a fan of the Pacers, but you're also a sharp bettor. You can think clearly, no bias. Is there really any chance here for the Pacers at plus 500 to actually win this series?
I think that there's a small chance for them. And look, to be fair and in full disclosure, this is a do as I say, not as I do type of thing. I did have a little small Pacers series price here, just because that's a little bit of my fandom, and I usually encourage people not to do that. But this isn't something that's going to make or break necessarily, so it's not a big bet. But I do think that they have a chance to compete here in this series. You know, step up in class in terms of the Thunder from a defensive standpoint, but also the Thunder are playing a really dynamic offense here with the Pacers. So I think that you can absolutely make a case that this is a team. Look, and they've been resilient, Doug. Every time they get down and every time they lose, they've come back and won the next game. And I don't think it was a fluke. I know some of the national media are out there saying, hey, this was a fluke. You beat an injured Cavs team, and then you didn't beat this team at full strength, and Tibbs didn't play his bench in the New York series until too late. Whatever. They're here. They're here and they absolutely deserve to be here. And there's a lot of these national experts that said that they were going to go down to Giannis and Milwaukee because it's like, okay, now they're healthy. Now Milwaukee is healthy and the Pacers dispatched them in five. So they absolutely deserve to be here. This is not a fluke. This is not luck. Yeah, you need to hit a couple big shots like Tyrese did where it dropped there in the garden from the heavens in game number one. So you need that sometimes on a championship run. How many teams don't have one of those games? So I absolutely think that the Pacers do have a shot here, but from a practical betting perspective, maybe you're going with series spread instead of like the outright series.
Right, so the series price feels right in your eyes, maybe a little too high for the
Little
underdog money.
inflated,
So you're
little
taking it,
inflated.
but so much of this is game to game, right? It's inflated until the Thunder win game one by double digits, and then it's not inflated. But if the Pacers can win game one, we have ourselves a series, much like they stole game one against the Knicks. I agree. I think, and I've said it a couple times this week, but it's worth mentioning it, giving it's game day. I think this is the best team the Thunder have faced all postseason. Now, that includes going 7 games with Denver and facing the best player in the world in Jokic. I think this Pacers team is legit, and they absolutely belong. But this is a giant step up in quality of opponent and class. They got to face the Knicks who don't play defense. The Cavs played minimal defense in that series as well. I believe Mobley missed a game too. And then in the first round, the Bucks didn't play any defense either. Much different situation going against the league's number one ranked defensive efficiency squad. However, the Pacers also can bring it, and they have an elite coach. There's good coaches out there like the Thunder, but Rick Carlisle is elite. Let's not forget he and the Mavs took down the Miami Heat with the Heatles and LeBron's first year. Now a lot goes to Dirk, but Carlisle was pulling the strings and he made chicken salad out of what with a lot of those role players and guys like Jason Terry and Jason Kidd and Sean Marion at the end of his career. So Carlisle knows what he's doing. He just may be completely outgunned here. And the Thunder have been very good in game one. So that's my concern here if you're a Pacers backer. So we shift to the series spread. You mentioned that could be. What do you think has the best value? We've had a couple guys mention Thunder minus 2.5. I'm of the belief that the Pacers could cover more games that they don't. But I do think this will be a one-sided series. I think this is going 5 games. I think the games will be tight, but I like under 5.5 games minus 148. I like plus 200. I don't think it's a sweep. I'd be stunned if it's a sweep. So I like 4-1 at plus 200.
Yeah, the way I wanted to approach this, like from an actual betting standpoint with no homerism involved, would be Pacers on the series spread plus 2.5, which right now at Bet Rivers minus 108. But we'll get to the trend. We'll get to the trends momentarily for game number one. They're not good for the road team, and they're especially not good for the underdog. So, assuming the Pacers lose game one, you're going to get plus money on that 2.5 if you think that the Pacers are going to take this six. And ultimately, I believe that they are. So that's kind of the approach I'm waiting for from that standpoint. I don't want to jump in on minus 108 or even if it was even money when, I'm going to get plus what, $1.50, $1.70 after a game one being down 1-0 in the hole.
Okay, so that makes sense. Now the question is, and you mentioned game one does not favor the road team. So if you take plus 2.5, do they win game five on the road? Is it going back to OKC 2-2? Do you think they steal game two? Like, how does it play out? Because I see a lot of people say, oh, Thunder in six. It's like, oh, so they're going to win on the road. It's a 2-2-1-1-1. So very different situation than maybe 2 decades ago or 25 years ago when they won game five at home and lost the Lakers in six on the road. How do you think this plays out?
Yeah, if you're going by pattern, the Pacers have been resilient when they come off a loss in this year's playoffs. Now, granted, this is a step up in class by who they're playing with the 68-win Thunder team, but coming off a loss in this year's playoffs, they're 4-0 straight up and 4-0 against the number. So there is a possibility, assuming they lose game one, that they can win game number two. And then it's like, okay, can you split at home? Well, you split at home, then you ensure 6 games that the Thunder could win on the road in game number six. They obviously have to win one in Oklahoma City, whether it's game number five or it's game number two. Indiana has also been kind of the cardiac comeback kids this year, 6-1 against the number in the second half spread when trailing at the half. So this is a team that has shown the resiliency to come back that you can never necessarily count out. And we were talking about that when we were doing the shows during the Knicks series, that Pacers game one comeback in the Garden was like boom, 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 boom over the last 3 minutes. Whereas the Knicks, when they did that in game number three on that Sunday of Memorial Day weekend, it was kind of a little bit death by paper cuts. The Pacers aren't a death by paper cuts team. They are, we get you right away and they hit you and they hit you quick. So all of a sudden they're down double digits and then all of a sudden it gets to a one possession game. So I think the Pacers have the resiliency here. So that's why I do like them for series spread. Now, I believe that game one, which we're going to get to here in just a second, that's a tall mountain to climb. I think for the Pacers tonight.
I'll get to it, but I'm hoping and I'm praying to God that the Thunder win the first 2 games because I will come off the bench heavy on the Pacers in game three and alternate lines. I don't think the Thunder have the chops to go up 3-0. I just don't. So I'm hoping, but you're right. The Pacers are a legit team. I wouldn't be shocked because I think this Thunder team's gonna have some growing pains. Maybe they all got it out of their system against Denver, but this is not an absurdly dominant team like maybe the Warriors with KD and everything in 2018. Series props. Before we get to game one, we've talked about some nice long shots. Yesterday, I mentioned Hartenstein being the top rebounder in the series, plus 450. Just a point one unit bet, just small. I am on the Thunder in 5 games exactly, plus 200 for half a unit. Anything that's caught your eye, series props, player props for the series, things like that?
Probably Shea to be the assist leader, and I think it's like plus 350 in that range right now. Because if you look over the course of the playoffs, he never really has much variance. in terms of his assists. I think he's 7 assists per game in the Thunder's wins, and he's 6.8 in the losses. Meanwhile, on the other side, Halliburton, astronomically high in the wins at about 10.7. Then he's like 7 on average in the losses. Oklahoma City, it's going to be tough for a tough matchup, I think, at least early on for Halliburton, based on the doubles that they're going to send him, where they're going to pick him up full court, and then trying to get that ball out of his hands and let other guys have to create. Oklahoma City allows, I believe, the least amount of assists against the for the opponents for the regular season. So Shea to lead in assists, I think, really makes sense, because people, and why you're getting a little value is because people obviously look at Shea as a scorer, and rightfully so, one of the leading scorers in the league, but he has the ball in his hands all the time. So he does create. And when you have the Thunder spread, he's able to find J Dub. He's able to find Caruso. He's able to find Lou Dort. He's able to play a pick and roll game with either Holmgren or Hartenstein. So he's got a lot of options there for assists.
We had Albert Nguyen on the show earlier this week. He thinks Carlisle might have some tricks up his sleeve, like the best way to defend this Thunder team, just get the ball out of his hands and make other guys make shots with the magnitude and the pressure of the stage. And that's going to probably turn SGA into a distributor more than a scorer, although he's so silky smooth. I believe he's only 26, real already a superstar. Just fascinating what he's been able to do. And I mentioned it, like there's times where you're watching a game and maybe it's on mute. You don't hear the broadcaster and you see just SGA scoring here and there. And you're like, he's probably got 20, 22 points. He's got like 38. It's like, what? But he just makes it look so easy and effortless. So I do think at some point you got to get the ball out of his hands. I saw the Nuggets trying to send a double here and there. So I could see that sort of just becoming a factor, and maybe he does start to rack up the assists. And if Lou Dort's guarding Halliburton, who's an overwhelming favorite to lead the series in assists, and maybe injuries, I think that's the only way you could play most assists in the series.
And a lot of that scoring from SGA, of course, comes from the line. And that's going to be a
Mhm.
frequent story throughout this series. How can the Pacers, I don't think you can totally keep him off the line, but can you limit those opportunities? Because he will get to the line and he will pile up the points, which is why it's always so kind of scary at times to play him under points. I was able to get away with it, I think, once in the last series where he's like under 32 and a half. That's where, if you're playing under points for him game to game, you have to hope that it's a blowout, and that they're up 20-25 comfortably, where all of a sudden he's playing in the mid 30 minutes and not like 40 minutes. So that's just an aside note.
Okay, good stuff. All right, let's get into game one now. This number has fluctuated between 9 and 9.5 all week. Currently 9.5 at Bet Rivers. The total has come down a little bit. We had Chris Massero earlier in the week. He had over 229.5, got up to 231.5, back down to 230 right now after the hook was there yesterday. How are you playing this side and or total here?
Yeah, nothing on the side for me. And I did tease it earlier here in our broadcast that sides are not good for game one underdogs in the NBA finals. You can go back, and this is about a 20-year sample size. Game one NBA Finals underdogs, which the Pacers find themselves in that situation tonight. 2-18 against the number, or straight up, and 3-17 against the number. And then stretch it back to 1996. It's like 8-21 against the number. So it's very hard. Teams are favorite in the finals for a reason, where home court really matters. So that's why you're seeing 9.5. In the market, especially even juiced a little bit. And I'm actually seeing at Bet Rivers, it's -114. I think this is going to 10 some places, Doug. So I think that you're going to see the Thunder get all the action here in game number one from a side perspective. So maybe that gives value to the Pacers. But for me, I need to. It's one of those things where it's like it's game one. It's a brand new series. These teams have had a few days off, so I've got to see something more before I like really load up on a bunch of bets in a game by game basis in this series. I think that this is a little bit of feeling out game from a side standpoint. So I'm not going to buck that trend. I think the number's a little bit inflated, but that's going to keep me out.
What do you make of that trend, that ridiculous game one trend? I mean, first things first that I think of is like, okay, so it's the NBA finals. The quote unquote better team, i.e., the team with the home court advantage has a better record, is not going to have a flat spot, right? The stage is the stage. It's like saying the Super Bowl, you're gonna have a flat spot. No. But this is still incredibly skewed one way.
Hmm. It is, and I think for the Thunder too. Like this is the first time for this group as well, because you got to look at some of those years where it's like, okay, we've had teams that have been to the finals on multiple occasions in those spots too. Uh, the Cavs with LeBron, the Warriors, the Bulls, the Heat with the big three with LeBron and Wade and Bosh. So the Spurs are included in that when they had their run in the early 2000s. So you got to keep in mind you're having experienced teams usually in this spot. That's why I think maybe the trend for tonight, it's still strong, but it's not as strong. So that's why I think that that number is probably getting a little bit inflated. So I know if people want to follow what is historically a very strong trend, you're paying a very heavy price now, especially at some shops where you're laying 10. I think that that's still to me a little bit too high. And I know that what I forget the year. Remember the Warriors? I think were 13 over the Cavs in game number one. I don't think they ended up covering. I think they ended up winning by 10.
2018. 2018.
2018.
They won
I
by
was
10
trying.
in overtime. That was the
Yeah,
uh, J.R. Smith thing at the end of the game when he got the offensive rebound and didn't and sort of dribbled to half court.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah. You're asking a lot, I think, to cover double digits. Could it happen? It certainly could happen. It's certainly plausible that we see kind of, yeah, Thunder kind of play okay and they win by 15. So then you cover the number, but I'm not gonna put any of my money on the side, at least pregame tonight.
We mentioned the market changing. Bet Rivers app where I am just went to 10. So you kind of anticipated that. I think the line's too high, but I do think it's going to be a shock to the system. And if you want to get more than 10, um, you know, all it takes is the Thunder to have a decent lead, like 5 points in the first quarter or more, right? Like you can get 10 and a half, 11 and a half. So maybe that's not even your best number. Bet Rivers will have live betting throughout the game and you can kind of feel it out like boxers in the early rounds. But the Pacers have been formidable and can attack in some of these. So I'm really fascinated to see how this all plays out. Any opinion on the total here?
Yeah, I would be looking perhaps under in the first half at 113. I think that you're going to see that get a little action. Actually, at Bet Rivers, it's 112 and a half, heavily juiced to the over. But I think looking at that first half under, and I'm not relying necessarily on a trend here, but the trend has been very good over the last 20 years, especially early in the series when there's a little bit of a feeling out process. The first half under has been about 63% in games 1 through 4 of the NBA Finals. A lot of people think, oh, it tightens up later in the series. Actually, that's been more, I think, conducive to overs as you get later in the series, unless it's game 5 where it's 2-2, which is like always a nails under spot, I think, in the entire NBA playoffs. But I like the first half under a little bit because I think maybe there is going to be some nervous energy on, especially on the Thunder side here. Even though the market is certainly betting the Thunder in the first half, you're starting to see more sixes in the market than you are 5.5s. Bet Rivers, by the way, still at 5.5, so you're laying the low of it if you're laying the Thunder at this point at Bet Rivers if you like them in the first half. But I could see some nervous energy. There's been a few days off for both teams. When did the Thunder close out Minnesota? Was it Wednesday night?
Oh, so I know last Saturday was game 3.
Okay, so then it was
Wednesday. So it was
yeah, it was
Wednesday, yeah.
Wednesday. It was Wednesday, and the Pacers obviously went to Saturday night, but they both had a few days off, so there could be, it's that rest versus rust question that we always deal with in sports betting, regardless of sport. Yeah, I think that there could be some rust here. I'd be under 113, and I'm probably going to play that small for the first half.
Hey, I give you a lot of credit after that back and forth Knicks Pacers. You said first half under was the right side. I forget which game it was, and you got it. I think it was game 6. So well done, Wes. You've been sniffing that out. So, you can't just react to what you last saw. You got to be able to stay nimble on that, and you did. And so maybe your anticipation here is smooth in that regard. So well done on that front. Okay. So we have props, obviously, and I touched on it yesterday and I gave it out in the newsletter. Halliburton under 17 and a half points. It was minus 120 in the newsletter. It was 132 or so yesterday. on the show. It's now the market unders minus 129. I think just Lou Dort and everyone on the switches is going to make life miserable for him. So that's where I am. I'm also on Holmgren under 8.5 rebounds at plus 107. Any opinion on Tyrese Halliburton just having to go through Lou Dort and everyone else on the perimeter defense in one of the regular season meetings? I want to say he only had like 8 points or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's been low and just a 2 game sample size, so you can't really look too much necessarily into that. But and in game one props in general, and I've said this throughout the playoffs on these broadcasts, it's really, really hard to, I think, load up necessarily. You know what I mean? Because you haven't seen a game. It's a brand new series, it's a brand new dynamic. So it's kind of like, I want to see something. And that sometimes carries over in game number two. I think the sweet spot to like bet props are really in the middle of a series, in games 3, 4, and 5. I think those are the best ones because then you have multiple games, and now multiple only being two, but you have multiple games in terms of okay, what have we seen in this matchup? How is the other side going to adjust? How is Daniel going to adjust? How is Carlisle going to adjust? And sometimes you get those buy low, sell high spots. A guy really exceeds for one game. So has the market reacted too much or have they reacted just right? So those are the things you have to ask yourself when you're doing the props. One that I am interested in, though, and it may be a little bit popular in game number one. Tyrese Halliburton under the points assists. It was 27 and a half. It's 26 and a half now. I still would like it because I think that Oklahoma City is gonna, try to blitz him a little bit, Doug. Where I think that they're gonna try to have him get the ball out of his hands, force some other guys, force Nemhard to be a creator, force Siakam to be a little bit of a creator. So I think that they're gonna try to get the ball out of his hands. And you mentioned the 5.5 and 2 games where they're not going to necessarily blitz him, but they're going to send those double teams and they're going to be active in the passing lanes. When he does that drive where it's kind of like, okay, he gets there and then he stops and then he tries to pass it back out. So they're going to be in them passing lanes where they're not going to let him get that teardrop. They're not going to let him get to the rim. So I think a scoring standpoint and assist standpoint, game one, I expect to be very tough for Tyrese tonight.
Yeah, I do too. That's interesting that you think the assists as well. I mean, look, he's been a machine. You mentioned SGA to lead the series in assists is decent play. I can see the defense really posing problems on that front. So I'm supporting you there. What about my Holmgren under rebounds? He missed both regular season meetings. In the conference finals, he went under in all 5 games, even when the market adjusted from 8.5 to 7.5. This number feels too high when you have Hartenstein out there on offense. Holmgren lurks around the 3-point line, and they have enough bigs to guard him, whether it's Miles Turner or someone. I just don't see this guy being that big of a force on the glass.
I see your logic there. It's something I'm going to stay out of because, and maybe this is me watching a lot of these Pacer games. The Pacers, and you even saw it in the Knicks series, they are not a good rebounding team. And they were always in the negative, it seems like, in most of that series. Miles Turner is a pretty solid rim protector. Above average guy in block shots, certainly, and then just altering shots. But he's not a great rebounder. He's not a big guy that you see him just gobble up rebounds necessarily, where he gets 14 or 15 rebounds like some of these other guys. It's not like a young like Jalen Duren, where it's like, okay, double double, all the time, and if, assuming he avoids foul trouble. Turner doesn't really do that because they run him where he's behind the 3-point line, and they have some stuff where he initiates action at the top of the key. So he's not a big rebounder. Thomas Bryant's not a big rebounder. We saw what the Pacers had to do. They had to go to Tony Bradley in that series just to keep Mitchell Robinson at bay, who's not a guy that they run any offensive sets for, who is just in there to clean the glass. That's all he was in there to do. And you do have an elite rebounder in Hartenstein, which I think helps your cause if you like this under. But I need to see some more before I play like an under rebounds on an Oklahoma City big guy. I need to see a little bit more rebounding out of the Pacers, which I have not seen a lot in this postseason. Part and parcel because they've shot the ball pretty well from the outside, so they're not getting a ton of offensive rebounds. But you get a lot of one and done possessions with the Pacers when they're not on their shots, and they're not a team that just cleans up the glass and gets second opportunities very often.
I see what you mean. I'm the other way. I need to see him actually crash the boards and go over a prop for me to get off this train. Now, part of it is I have equity on the under from the last series going under all 5 games or maybe 4 games. So I understand that, but I have some money to play with. I want to bring in some notable wagers from Bet Rivers. Or they took a $10,000 bet on the Thunder minus 9.5 at minus 110. So that's kind of interesting. That's a sizable bet. There's been some the props that are getting a lot of action is SGA under 46.5 PRA, Siakam 15 plus points, SGA under 7.5 assists. That's interesting. Hartenstein over 7.5 points. I could see that. You mentioned the Pacers being bad rebounders, Hartenstein crashing the boards, things like that. Um, I think this number's too high. I do like the Pacers to make a run, and because they also don't fold. Like the T-Wolves folded in games 1 and 2 like a cheap suit. They couldn't get their offense going. Guys like McDaniels couldn't hit a shot, and they shot really poorly from three. And the Thunder, I believe, in game 1 were 50% from three. I don't see the Pacers doing that. You can't leave them open. They'll make shots. Carlisle's instilled the right confidence. They've been doing it all year. I think this number's a little too high for me. But I'm with you on some of this wait and see approach. And so I like your style. You think there's regression after a couple games in the finals or any series in the NBA, and then you want to pounce. And I know you were doing that with Pajemski with the Warriors a little bit. So before we turn the page to the W, does anything catch your eye that we haven't discussed, or any thoughts here on this series matchup?
Yeah, not yet. I mean, I hate to say wait and see, but that's kind of, I think, the best approach, especially from the prop standpoint, because you don't want to, I think, if you're playing one or two, that's fine, but you don't want to like get overexposed. I think because then all of a sudden something happens. There's an injury, or maybe this turns into a blowout. So if you got like a bunch of Thunder overs, let's say, and then all of a sudden that lineup's taken out, it's a 25-point game, and they're out of the game, 6 minutes left to go. So this is a little bit of a wait and see. I want to just get some results a little bit so I can see a little bit. Okay, here's how I think that this is going to go.
Patience. And we see on the update, the Thunder now 10-point favorites. So a little steam here, maybe the public getting involved. Um, we'll see. I've been talking out of both sides of my mouth. I said it's a step up in class for the Pacers. Maybe they're a little inflated, having not faced the best Knicks defense, some of these other defenses, but give them credit that their offense has made shots and they've been potent. They've made those opposing defenses look bad. And on the flip side, I've been saying I like the Pacers and the points if I had to play the side. I just think it's a big number, and I don't care about the trends. I really don't. And to your point, Wes, a lot of those teams were perennial teams in the finals and seasoned. This is like year one of the Warriors when they got there for the first
Hmm.
year under Steve Kerr. They're loaded, set up for the future, but they stumbled through that series a little bit, and they caught some breaks with the injuries for the Cavs. Obviously, no Kevin Love, and then Kyrie got hurt, I believe, in game one at the end. So I'd be careful thinking this Thunder team's just going to roll through the Pacers. With that being said, I think they can. I think they win in 5 games, which I have mentioned. Okay, we turn the page to the W. No games yesterday. We have 2 games tonight. I think a couple interesting matchups when you factor in what these teams are doing. We'll start with the Liberty, the defending champs, one of 2 undefeateds remaining this year in the W, coming off a 48-point blowout of the Sun. They're now 12.5-point favorites at the Mystics, who played the Fever tight, but shot just 1 of 10 from downtown. And Washington did not cover despite coming all the way back from, I think, a 12-point deficit in the fourth to cut it to 3. 12.5 feels like the right number. Mystics kind of can't get out of their own way at times, but they've been sneaky good against some of the mediocre and bad teams. But I think the Liberty are just too much of a step up in class here. And Liberty with Natasha Cloud, they're better than they were last year.
They are, and by the way, just to let people know, these next few games, and they're kind of in the thick of it right now. These are the Commissioner's Cup games. So with the Commissioner's Cup games, I think it was Liberty Lynx last year where the Lynx won the Commissioner's Cup, and the Liberty won the overall championship in the finals. But keep in mind, margin of victory does play a factor in this. And if you looked at Sunday's game, the Liberty beat the Sun 100-52. So they have now a 48 because that was their first Commissioner's Cup game. So that's now 48 in terms of the margin. That's a big margin because that's how they determine like tiebreakers here. The Minnesota Lynx, by the way, they're 2-0 on the other side, plus 34 through their two games they have played so far. So they've been clearly the best two teams, I think, so far. And that's not surprising that they've rolled up big margins. Now, that being said, this would probably be Mystics or pass for me at plus 13. The Mystics already lost by 22 at home to the Liberty last week. You're getting an inflated number when you see a team win by 50, which you don't see very often in the WNBA. So for me, this would be Mystics or pass. In terms of the totals, I don't know how many totals I'm going to be doing in the WNBA over the next week and a half or 2 weeks because you get this margin and you get foul fests, by the way. Even, like I think it was the Mystics Fever game where it was a, 7 point game with like 8 seconds left to go and Mystics are fouling, right? And then it ends up they lose by 9. So because of the margin, that's why you're seeing. So you're seeing with these commissioners cups too, you're getting starters that are playing heavier minutes. So that's something to look for a prop standpoint. But plus 13 on the Mystics for me, or absolutely nothing, which might be what I end up choosing.
See, I'm kind of favorite or pass here. I think they're in a groove, and I think they're hungry. I think getting a ball handler, point guard team leader like Natasha Cloud, who did not win last year, it injects some new energy into the team. And I think we're seeing the Mystics come back to earth a little bit. They had a nice start, and they're well coached by Sidney Johnson. And anybody who got 60-1 on him to be coach of the year, good on you.
Former
But
Princeton head coach.
yeah, I just think the Liberty have too much firepower. I love Brittany Sykes. She's elite. Really, really good player, tough competitor. And Kiki Irafin's been nice, and she's in the rookie of the year conversation. But other than that, there's just not a lot to write home about. And well, first half I should mention, they're 6-1 ATS, they being the Liberty. They've been really good first quarter, first half against the number. You're right. They blew out the Sun, but that was a bad spot for Connecticut. They were the last winless team in the league coming off their first win. They were just fat and happy and didn't really know how to play. And frankly, a couple of their starters were questionable in the previous game, so maybe had lingering injuries. But Mabry, it just shows you how clueless Stephanie White is. Didn't know how to defend Mabry in that game that they won because the Liberty did know how to defend her, and she was worthless. I agree with the steam here. I do like the Mystics. I think there'll be better opportunities to bet on them. So I'm on the other side in terms of lean. So I lean Liberty or pass. I like the first half the most. It's getting up there at 7.5. But they're that loaded. And Mystics just I think they're coming back to earth. I like Sykes. I think they need another player like Sykes who can create on their own. Citron can at times, but they're just a little they're missing another I mean, basically, Shakira Austin, if she were healthy and reliable from a health standpoint, they'd be really solid.
No,
So,
yeah, I could see that. It would be lean dog for me, but this is something I'm going to stay out of because it's tough to
yeah,
get in front of a freight train, right?
right.
I guess you either want to be on it or not be with it at all, and that's probably what I'm going to end up being. But yeah, I think the 10.5, I think, is where it opens some places, and up to 13. That is a big jump here, and I guess it could be justified, but nothing for me. It would be Mystics if you made me.
I think for me, it's just the 25% shooting from 3 in the previous meeting that they won by 22. Like, if they start hitting those shots and Jonquel Jones and things like that, this game can get away from them. Um, and the only game they had a nail biter is when Jones missed the game against the Valkyries. So that's if she's playing, this team is pretty impressive. And Stewie hasn't even caught fire yet. She's been really slow starter this season, but the team's on a roll and she's a team player. But once she gets going, then they're really going to be a wagon. Let's talk about those Valkyries. They're involved in the other game tonight. They are visiting the Phoenix Mercury, who are doing some impressive things shorthanded. Kalea Copper hasn't played yet. She's fantastic. Alyssa Thomas has missed a couple games. Don't know her exact status for tonight. Valkyries have been interesting. They're an expansion team, playing well in first halves at times because they play hard. They play smart. Nakase, their coach, is really strong, but they just don't have the horses. They got a lot of leftovers, for lack of a better term, from the expansion draft, so to speak, and they're a work in progress, but they're playing well and catching some teams off guard. I don't know if this is the right spot, but if it's just Sabali, maybe 6 is the right side. I just don't wanna put a lot of stock in what the Valkyries did against what they did against the Lynx in the last game. I believe they were winning at halftime and then got boat raced in the second half because they just don't have the talent. So that was their last game. They lost by 9, but the problem is the second half, they only had 23 total points, and there's only so much Valerie Burton and the company can do. So this number feels right. I would look at under, if anything.
Yeah, nothing for me. I think if you got the opener at 7.5 on Golden State, good for you because I don't really want to lay it with the Mercury, even though they've been kind of holding it together, right, with this brand new team, and you mentioned how shorthanded they are. If Satu has like a really bad shooting game, they're in trouble. Like they count on her so much now with that without Mac, without Copper, without Thomas, and they're playing Katie Westbeld there in the starting lineup, who would be like a deep rotation player if everybody was healthy. So not a team I really want to lay points with right now are the Mercury.
What do you think of the under? I'm close to pulling the trigger on under 157 here. The Mercury do kind of analytically driven, do shoot some threes, but the Valkyries are limited. I think the Mercury defense is solid. I like their coach a lot. This is going to be a battle of the minds. Both coaches really strong. I think this is an under. What about you?
Yeah, that would be the way I would lean. I think the market is starting to lean that way as well because of the fact that Phoenix, you cannot necessarily count on the secondary options, I think, for offense at this standpoint. So it'd be under or pass for me.
Yeah, but you got me thinking about the fouling late, things like that. So maybe it's a first half under. Yeah. I'll ultimately pass, but that's how I would look to play it. All right. Yes, sir. Mr. Hoosier here. Congratulations on making it to the NBA Finals. Quite the run so far for the Pacers, and best of luck. I root for your happiness. So good luck to you. I root for my bets as well. But it should be a good series. I do think it's going to be competitive. I don't think this is going to be a blowout.
Well, sometimes our bets are tied to our happiness, but we don't want
Yes.
to make them too intertwined long term just to keep our sanity.
I've always encouraged people to bet on their teams, not on their teams, but bet on games involving their teams because you know your team's the best. Like I've bet against the Lakers more than I bet on them because I feel like I know them. Things along those lines, especially football, the NFL. If you know these teams pretty well, I've just said don't necessarily bet on the team, but just bet on the games. You know those teams pretty well, in my opinion, if you follow sports as closely as we do. So that's going to do it for us. Appreciate everyone chiming in. Don't forget you can always get involved in the conversation, and don't forget we have great tennis content on the other Betting Weekly shows. Betting Weekly game bet match with Nigel and Sean. They're going to preview the French Open semifinals on the men's side. Two great matchups, including Sinner against the Joker. So go check all that out. And don't forget, the betting newsletter has awesome content, links to our shows here under the Betting Weekly umbrella and the Bet Rivers Network. Tons of good content in terms of previews for soccer and tennis. You also have all the Bet Rivers odds, so tons of pages there, really in depth for any sports fan, let alone sports better. So that's going to do it for this show. Albert and Wynn for tomorrow is in, and we're going to break down game 2 over the weekend in the NBA Finals. Obviously, there's going to be a giant reaction in the market with both the side total and then props. Don't forget about that. So it'll be a really good show tomorrow. And don't forget Betting Weekly Hardball as well. Wes will be back tomorrow for that. And sorry, Adam the Bull will be in for that, as Wes was in yesterday, had some nice plays as well. So all that part of the Bet Rivers Network and the new shows we've launched here, 2 p.m. Eastern Betting Weekly Hardball, and then 3 p.m. Eastern Monday through Friday Betting Weekly Fast Break. So for Wes Reynolds, everyone behind the scenes, producers, graphics, research, I'm Doug Kezirian. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.